Hey everyone, Pastor George here, and I thought I would put out a video because I just came across some really interesting information that I got originally from Nature, which is a journal, academic journal, but also Christianity Today had a really interesting write up about it, and so I'll link some of that in the description below if you want to go and read these things more in depth. Just a heads up that the Nature article itself is pretty academic, so it's not like the most easy thing to read, but it's still really interesting. And I think it fits with the current theme that we kind of have going with our Christian education class on death, dying, and resurrection, because there was a burial site or graveyard in modern day Kyrgyzstan, so that's up in Central Asia, uh, above Afghanistan and things like that. And so it's the plains that are there. And that is a region that we don't really think much about these days, but in the past it was really important because it was one of the major routes on the Silk Road. And so that means lots of trade went through that region. And also, Christians were present in that region. Again, something we don't really think of. But Christianity spread across the Silk Road and was part of a collection of churches, which is known as the Church of the East. And in these churches, you would have pretty diverse group of people because it would be traders and other settlements that would happen across the Silk Road. And so they found this graveyard, and in the graveyard they found people of various different ethnicities kind of buried together, which is really cool. The reason I'm talking about this, though, is because these bodies that they also found in this graveyard are the first known victims that we have at the moment, right now anyway, of the Black Death. So we have never really found anything earlier than this, and this is from the middle of the 1300s, essentially. And that's really interesting, just historically, because it helps us figure out more where this thing came from, because everyone knows it's spread along trade routes, but no one really knows where it comes from originally, and there are lots of sources. But this gets us a little bit closer back to that. But it also, from a theological and religious perspective, lets us know a little bit how Christians at the time were dealing with this. And as you remember in my class, I like to point out that people in the past had a much more present and, I would say, uh, understanding or less scared view of death than we do. And that isn't to say that people didn't fear dying. I believe they did. I just think that they viewed it more as something that you can't escape from because you had to think about it pretty often. And in this graveyard, we have the gravestones that have markers on them. And on these markers, you can have things that are written, and some of it's been scrubbed off. We don't have complete markings on them, but we know that they're Christian. And we also found like evidence of sermons and liturgies and things that people had written, which is really cool. So Christianity Today has a list of them, but one of the things that I think is really interesting is they have a one that says, and we don't know who it was, but it says the aim of life is Jesus our Savior. Right, that's all that's written on that we can find on the actual gravestone marker. And another one says, died of pestilence. This is the tomb of the believer Sanmak. Right, so you just have things like that. And I think one of the things that you see kind of reiterated on these gravestones over and over is this idea that there's a resurrection and a hope. And one of the liturgy things that funeral liturgy that they found there says, and it's a prayer to God, and it says, the soul that has taken refuge in your cross will see your grace on the day of your coming. Right, so even these Christians that have been separated from us by hundreds of years, who lived through this really horrific thing that happened in world history, where people were just getting wiped out by a disease that no one had any idea of how to treat or how to stop. And this is what they were thinking and believing at the time. And I think that we usually forget this because we're very modern, and anyone who's living at a certain time is modern to themselves, right? We privilege the time around us more than we do when we look backwards or look at the future even. And this reminds us that it's really important that Christians have gone through death and things before, and that when we talk about death, we're not doing so out of a place of just saying kind of la di da, like this has never been known or attempted or whatever, you know, just kind of things that people haven't really experienced. But no, this is something that people experienced very personally for hundreds of years, thousands of years, until the modern day, and we still do, just maybe not as much. And so I don't know. I think it's just really interesting because we see these same themes being repeated, and it's a call to us from people in the past who are telling us that yes, you know, this is what we need to remember. That's why we have gravestone markers, right? That's why we have things written, is to remind us of the past and remind us of the wisdom that comes from that. So I just thought it was really interesting and wanted to share it because it kind of is going along with what we were talking about in our classes. So I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you tomorrow for our Wednesday Bible study recap. Peace out.